Now that the development side of the hedging project is starting to look a lot better, I was getting concerned about the artistic side, how to make the game look good. Right now, it's a choice between voxel or claymation style graphics. For the latter, that requires 3D scanning. I wasn't sure how to do that, so I started reading. Eventually, I learned about some interesting software from Apple. The Create 3D Models with Object Capture event from WWDC 2021 was a strong match. By using photogrammetry, a 3D model can be created from lots of 2D pictures. Apple even provides the necessary software with the HelloPhotogrammetry app. What? Is that right? Previously, I associated this tech with big Hollywood movie studios, using equipment and software that costs thousands of dollars. Can I really get this done with just a Mac and an iPhone? Well, I was going to try. But almost immediately, I realized a problem. Should I move the camera or should I move the object? Which method would yield better results? For the former, I already have a great gadget for that. It was reviewed previously on Photics TV, the VidPro SK22 Professional Skater Dolly. Since the wheels can be angled, it's designed to orbit a camera around an object.
The enemy was too much for Bumblebee.
Oops. For the latter, well, I knew what I was looking for. It was a plate that spins on top of another plate. You know, the thing that does the thing. So, what is that thing called? Do you know what I mean? You might see them in restaurants or fancy dinner parties. Well, I went to Amazon.com to find what I was looking for. I don't remember the exact search words I used, but there it was. A Lazy Susan. I'm not kidding. That's what the thing is called. I don't know why it's called that. And apparently, according to the Lazy Susan page on Wikipedia, the explanation of the term Lazy Susan may have been lost to history. The point is now I needed one of those things to conduct my experiment. Except Photics TV is just getting started, so money is tight. Couldn't I just make my own Lazy Susan? See, the problem is that many of these spinning things have a raised upper lip to hold stuff in place. That would block my shots, which is a key to photogrammetry. You're not just shooting the object from one angle. All sides need to be photographed. So I collected 5 items, which were purchased from 4 different stores. The main piece was the Lazy Susan hardware by Woodpile Fun. This was purchased at the Hobby Lobby for $3.99. But even after careful searching, I couldn't find the right size disc. There were many pieces of wood in this craft store, but they were either too expensive or unfinished. Usually both. A trip to Target solved that problem. 3 small risers that look like little tables were purchased for $5. They were already painted black, so that skips a big step. While at Target, a subject was chosen. It's an apple. To be more specific, a Honeycrisp apple from Honey Bear. This was $1.89. Wow. Food prices are shocking to me. Which do you suppose would be harder to make? 2 apples or the Lazy Susan hardware? Although, apparently, this apple was grown and shipped from Chile. That's a pretty far trip for an apple. Still, some farm tech videos are being planned for this channel. Maybe hydroponics can lower my grocery bill. So, if you'd like to see that, then subscribe to Photics TV. The next item was even cheaper than the apple. I was looking for little rubber feet to put on the bottom of the Lazy Susan. So, these adhesive slider pads were purchased from the Dollar General. The final item on the list is a light-up photo studio box from Bytech, which was purchased from Five Below for $7. It wasn't purchased recently though, I got it some months ago, but this seemed like a great reason to open the box. The size of this light box determined the size of the wooden discs, And before I removed the legs, I wanted to make sure that these circular objects fit inside. It was a perfect fit. Even the largest one seemed like it belonged in the box. And just in general, I like this little photography gadget. Look at how it lights up the toy Cybertruck and Bumblebee. Obviously, lighting is critical for photography, but even more so with photogrammetry. My idea was to flood the object with light, so that I could use smaller aperture sizes, as that increases the depth of field. If the pictures are blurry, the software will likely fail at generating the 3D model. So now I had to make a choice. Which of the risers should I use? The small, medium, or large riser? I decided to go with the largest riser as the top piece, with the medium-sized riser as the base. The smaller riser will stay intact as a decorative Apple display for my home. But even though there's enough width for the discs, there's not enough height for the risers. I carefully removed the legs from the risers. I thought I might need some power tools or at least a saw, but the legs popped right out after a little bit of wiggling. Now the two discs could be attached to the Lazy Susan hardware. Normally, this is a somewhat involved process, as how do you attach the screws from inside this mechanical Oreo? That usually involves drilling through the bottom disc. Already, I was planning to skip that part, but this next fact made certain of it. The screws are taller than the wood, so I simply glued them together. I'd like to say that I got them perfectly centered, but despite a serious attempt, I was not successful in doing that. It's close enough though, and I think it looks great overall. Better than I imagined, actually. I didn't even use the slider pads for two reasons. First, I wanted rubber feet to keep the Lazy Susan in place. These slider pads have the exact opposite purpose. Duh. But also, this rotating platform is quite sturdy. It wasn't sliding at all. That means this lazy homemade Susan was less than $10. Nice. Once this was all set up, I proceeded to take many pictures. There were 119 in the first experiment. That might not seem like a lot by today's standards, but wow, that would have been expensive when I first started with photography. Next was a true test of my expertise, as this is a combination of photography and app development. While Apple has made the code for HelloPhotogrammetry available for download, it's not a standard app. It's a command line app that requires Xcode to build. It's no secret that Apple has been investing in augmented reality and virtual reality. So I'm surprised that they didn't just go all the way and make a more friendly interface. Perhaps that's Apple trying to encourage developers to make more advanced photogrammetry apps. It was something that I was considering as I opened the project in Xcode. That's Apple's developer tools. Using that software, I built and archived the project, and then it was exported. The result was the HelloPhotogrammetry app on my desktop. If you've been wondering if you should upgrade to macOS Monterey, this is yet another reason. RealityKit Object Capture is a feature that was introduced with macOS 12. Another requirement is found in the developer documentation. It says, RealityKit Object Capture is only available on Mac computers that meet the minimum requirements for performing object reconstruction, including at least 4 GB of RAM, and that have a GPU which supports ray tracing. Apparently, my 2018 Mac Mini didn't qualify, as an error was displayed while trying to run HelloPhotogrammetry. It said, Object Capture is not available on this computer. So I wandered over to my M1 MacBook Air. This is an intensive process, so it was nice to have the extra computing power. It does take a while. The first attempt took around 10 minutes to process. It was also consuming over 400% of CPU usage. But when it was done, I was amazed. That tasty apple was converted to a 3D model. It wasn't perfect, but it was really close considering the amount of effort required. The USDZ file can be viewed with Xcode, where you can examine the quality of the model. It looks a lot more bumpy than the original. I suspect that has to do with the glossy appearance of the apple. This is very useful information, as I was wondering if I should go with a matte finish for the clay creations, or if I should bake them and make them shiny. If photogrammetry is to be used, it seems I should aim for less reflective surfaces. In Xcode, you can change the rendering options to show the wireframe. The number of polygons is quite high. That's where Blender enters the picture. Using the decimate modifier can dramatically reduce the number of polygons, which is going to be necessary to improve the performance of the game. While I am new to 3D game development, 100,000 polygons for an apple seems a bit unnecessary. Yet, cleaning this up does seem to involve a lot of work. The more polygons removed, the lower the quality. It looks like I'll have to get better at Blender to finish this game. Also, it looks like I'll have to work on my photogrammetry skills too, as this apple doesn't have a bottom. I made several attempts to add that piece of the apple to the model, but I was not successful. Even though I photographed it, the software would just skip those images. It looks like I have more reading and more experimentation to do. Additionally, lighting is a bit of a problem. While the discount lightbox is nice, the single row of LED lights is creating harsh shadows. That's making the bottom of the apple darker. Perhaps the Lazy Susan should be white. That might reflect more light back towards the object. I could also add additional lighting to remove the shadows. One more thing, the HelloPhotogrammetry app has lots of settings. You can choose the detail of the output model. You can let it know if the images are sequential. You could also set the feature sensitivity. I played around with the settings and found that even reduced detail is still quite high, at least for this project. It didn't look too different from the full model. Can you tell which one is which? Well, if you were looking at the file sizes, there is a dramatic difference. So, what's the answer to the question, which method do I prefer? Dolly or Susan? Well, personally, I'd rather use the Lazy Susan. Maybe it's because I don't have to move around as much. With the Skater Dolly, it wasn't fun trying to roll the camera around an apple, and ultimately, I didn't see much difference in the quality. While the natural lighting was easier to work with, the controlled lighting is more consistent. Once I figure out how to improve the Lazy Susan method, the results should be quite repeatable, which is going to be a necessary skill for this game. There are many characters to create. Anyway, that's the story. Hopefully this information was helpful and entertaining to you. Thanks for watching.